Welcome to the Dream Interpretation Podcast, the show about life transformation through dream interpretation. I'm Michael Sheridan. And as you can see with me is Susan Pullen. Now, if you're new to the show, you may not know this, but Susan was a co-host of the show for about 2 years and even ran the show on her own a few times when I was on vacation. Susan, it's absolutely terrific to have you back. Well, we're not in studio. That's a bit different, but back on the show. And I promised and teased this a while ago that we would have this catch up. So thanks for coming.
Great to be here, Michael. Thank you.
So you said that there were a number of things. Obviously, we met, we talked, and I know what you're doing. But there were a few things you wanted to talk about on the show. Which is the work you're doing now, which is great because it's totally in alignment with anybody who listens to the show will want to know what you do. But you said, and here's a dream. If we have time, we could include this dream. And I'm thinking, why not start with the dream? And I don't know if you want to start with the dream, but let's introduce yourself to the people who don't know you. What is it you do?
Yeah, so I have the great joy of helping people basically release what's not theirs, like childhood conditioning that comes up in dreams. Release what doesn't belong to them so they can really step fully into their gifts and their calling and live their destiny.
And how do you do it? What is your main mode of work?
Well, primarily these days, I do a lot of family constellation work with people, which is a way of working with inherited family trauma. So if you think about, we see patterns in generations like alcoholism. You can see often in families, goes through generations, but there are lots of other things too, like perfectionism or not feeling good enough, or difficulties in relationships, or trouble with money, that we carry on in our lives in an unconscious way, even though the root of the problem is really several generations back. And so the things that we try on an individual level to change things for ourselves often aren't effective because we haven't actually addressed that root origin of the problem. So it's kind of like if I hunch over my computer all day, my neck gets sore and I take an aspirin, that might help a little bit, but it's not really solving the problem.
Gotcha. And I've worked with you. I've been on the receiving end of what you do, and it's absolutely amazing. And I've said that on the show before, and you're doing it sometime. So it's a good few years ago that I worked with you to try this out. And I remember describing it at the time. I was saying, okay, what we do is very similar. The methods that we use, we both use dreams, but the methods that we use are a little bit different at times. But the goal is the same. But I said that to compare it to, because I talk about cutting the ties that bind, where you're focusing on one parent, for instance. And I said, your work is, instead of focusing on one parent, you're focusing on a lineage. You're focusing on that parent and all the ancestors back in their line. Is that correct? Would that be a correct way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so,
because go ahead.
I was going to say, so it's like mom is the sum of her lineage, and dad is the sum of his lineage. And so all the traits and all the negativity that he passes on to you, or she passes on to you, comes from somebody somewhere in their ancestry. And you're more focused on saying, let's see where that comes from. Let's go address that.
Yeah. Partly because then also we're not passing it on to the next generation. But also, I think it helps us have more compassion for our parents when we see them in the context of what was unhealed that came before them. And from my perspective, we carry on these burdens or wounds of our lineage out of love. It's a way of like remembering the people who were excluded, the people who died young, the people who suffered in war. We include them by repeating some aspect of their fate, their emotions, even their physical symptoms in some cases.
I was quite surprised when working with you. You're able to say, okay, we can have different people play the role of, say, your mom or your aunt or somebody else, your great grandmother. And if people aren't around, you said we could also say, okay, this pepper pot is your great grandmother, and this. And in my mind, I'm thinking that's ludicrous. This couldn't possibly work. But boy, does it work. It's quite amazing. It really is quite amazing. And I know it's probably way too much to talk about that on the show, but I wish you could. Is there a way to explain why that works?
So first of all, energy is non-local, right? There's that element of, on an energetic level, we are connected to everything, really, and especially to those that we share DNA with. And when we set up a constellation, we're bringing in the energy of the family system, or the family soul, we call it. And so even if, like, I have a room full of strangers, they don't know me, they don't know my family, but someone stands in the place of my father, and what they report as a representative, it can have an uncanny accuracy. And like you said, even if I'm using the pepper pot, I'm using teacups, I'm using pieces of paper on the floor, people will have sensations arise in their body, emotions arise, emotional responses arise that tell us a lot about that energetic connection and how it's influencing me. And it is uncanny the way those feelings can be, in some cases, really strong.
Yeah.
Even though I don't know the person.
And very therapeutic. I found it very releasing in the moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's super helpful for us to process the emotions in the lineage in this way, because oftentimes we don't have the story that goes with it. And in my experience, when we take the story away from just the emotion itself, or we start to see the context of it, then it's a lot easier to let it move and let it resolve, like emotions naturally do when they have the room to do that.
Yeah. If somebody is interested, and we'll repeat this at the end of the show, but if somebody's interested in looking you up to find out what you offer and how they can get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I made a special page on my website for your listeners. So it's true-radiance.com/podcast.
Oh, super. All right. Yeah. And we'll repeat that again at the end of the show, true-radiance.com/podcast. And you definitely have to do this. Speaking of lineage, Susan is part of the heritage of this show. So I remember when we would sit down and say, okay, what are we going to talk about? Because when you were involved in the show, we did a 1 hour long show, and we split it up into 3 segments. We had an interview, we had a dream section, and then we had is lesson the right way to put it? And it was great because you often took on the role of saying, I'll come up with what we need for the next show. And it was great to sit there and learn and use my wit to poke holes that I know you didn't like. So, but I can't switch it off, Susan.
Great fun.
It doesn't switch off. But it was very good. It was really enjoyable. And Heidi, of course, was involved in that too. But what have we got? Let's have a look at the dream. Is that okay if we have a look at the dream?
Sure.
Because, like, you're talking now about what you do and what you've learned, and you actually teach other people how to do this. And not just teach people, you teach people how to do this, and then you have a second level where you help, like you take it further. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
second level has like more advanced skills, and then it has a business component as well. Because as you and I know, developing the skills of using our spiritual gifts and living our calling is sometimes a different skill set from learning how to have a profitable business based on that.
Totally, totally. And we all know plenty of people who are fantastic at what they do, but they do it as a sideline. So in other words, they're working a 9 to 5 job, and they're doing this in their exhausted time. Um, and maybe taking 1 or 2 clients a week, even though it's what they really love to do, because they don't have that other skill of how do I transition, and we're not trained in school on how to do this. How do I transition from working for somebody else to putting on all the hats and getting my own clients? And there's a huge amount in that. There's a huge amount of courage in it, as well as everything else that's required in it. But I've covered your dreams on the show before many times. You would volunteer and say, "Here's my dream. Let's do it on today's show." But you had dreams that said, quit your 9 to 5 job, your conventional job, the one that has all the health and stability and security, all the health benefits. Quit that, Susan, and and learn how to support yourself doing the work you love to do. And I remember you said, "I've set a date," and I'm like, "Oh, when is it? What is the date?" And it was like a year away. Um, but fair play to you. You stuck to it. You actually did it. And very few people can do it. Um, how hard was that, by the way?
I definitely had to work through, first of all, fear that people would think I was weird, fear that my family would think it was weird,
And you
fear that
mean
I
weird,
wouldn't
weird because you're leaving a good job that pays well.
be leaving a good job and stepping into really owning the spiritual aspect of who I am and the work that I do, which had been like more in the closet before. Um, and then of course concern about would I be able to pay the mortgage and that kind of thing as well. I remember when I left my job, my dad, I don't know how many books on retirement he gave me, but it was a lot.
That's funny.
But for me, it was the calculation was pretty simple, because when I compared the risk to of leaving my job and striking out and having a full-time practice supporting myself doing this work, when I compared the risk of that to getting to the end of my life and looking back and thinking I never really did it,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was that made it easier.
But it says how much you love working with people and helping them heal their traumas, in for you to be able to take that leap of faith. Um, and I think it's more than a leap of faith. They don't say, "We'll catch you on the way down." It's like when you bounce a few times, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So, um, but you had a dream anyway that I still remember, and I use it in my courses because it said to learn how to support yourself. Now, that's encouraging in one way because it's saying, look, this is what you're meant to do. But it's also the discouragement was you have to learn it. And that's not easy. Maybe that's a topic for another day, but it does take a lot of courage to do it, spend all your life savings, and basically subsidize your first few years of clients while you build up a practice. And
It's true. Yeah. And even just committing to learning to use my gifts, because, I was tracking what my dreams were saying about what my gifts were, what my purpose was. But even still, I felt kind of hazy about how it actually worked for me.
yeah,
And and I think for a long time, I was just waiting for the clouds to part and some like lightning bolt to come down and flip a switch where suddenly all my spiritual gifts would be fully operational and I would know how to use them. And for some people, maybe it works that way, but for me, it did not. I had to commit to practicing. I mean, like most of life.
Yeah, that's
getting really good took practice. So
I think that's true
yeah.
for everybody, even when it comes to gifts. You nobody ever feels ready when you start off, and at some point you take that leap. But um, you so you took that bold step. But can we have a look at your current dream? Because I think it's really good because it's still showing you really positive things based on your commitment that your guides or angels are saying to you. So I'm going to read out the dream, which is kind of funny because it's your dream. Maybe you should read it, but I don't know. Do you have it in front of you?
Yeah, I can read it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I was on a college campus and I was outside, but went into a building through an entrance that I had never been in before and came into an administrative office, like a higher administration office upstairs that I had never been in before. And there was a woman working in the office and she was listening to like an interview or podcast or something on her phone. And I thought it was about family constellations. So I said, "Ooh, is that about family constellations?" And she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Yes, Susan, we were thinking of having you teach a class." And this really surprised me. I didn't think she would know who I was or be interested in having me teach a class because I was like staff and not faculty. But that may just align with my former life, my
Yes.
earlier day job. Yeah.
Yes, because you worked in a hospital. You worked in a university hospital, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So so I channeled on that, and you gave me this dream yesterday, and not knowing exactly what you're doing now. I mean, because we don't want to give it all. Don't want to give it all away to me. When I was channeling on it, I was asking because we think of third level education, university as third level.
Mm.
So I was wondering when I was channeling, I was like, is it a third level to what she's doing? And my guides were saying, no, it's second level. And it was kind of funny because it's like, okay, then why is it university anyway? But it was still, they were insistent it's a second level to the programs that you're already doing. And I asked you, were you doing a second level? And you said you were trying it out. And then the rest came, and it was that they're saying that they're going to integrate into people's paths the work that you're going to do. So let me explain. So you teach people how to do this constellation work. They go off and they get their clients, or you give them clients, as part of what you do for them. And then they come to you and say, here's what we're doing. Can you give me advice or whatever? I don't want to put words in your mouth. But it's a level of indirection. Normally the people that come to you that you're working with, you're there with your guides and the client is with you with their guides. But here, the person that's being talked about is not present. And neither are their guides. And what this dream is about is saying that the higher powers have determined that they're going to set it up to where your second level work is integrated with the life path of the client. So then their guides are going to get involved in those meetings that you have with your second level students, which is really cool. I mean, it's beyond cool. So now you've got a lot of responsibility on your shoulder, and it's a level of it's a level of detail in a dream that's quite surprising to see, because I didn't know they'd do that. I never thought about it before. I suppose I never thought about it before. They must do it, but here for them to formally say it, so they want you to continue with this second level of class that you're doing. Now, second level of what? What's your first level? What's your second level? Tell us what you're doing now that I've said what the dream means.
Yeah. So it's a year-long course in personal and family soul healing. So the first part of the course is really like spiritual foundations. It's about learning what our gifts are and how they work for us, and building our connection with spirit. And then the second part of the course is on how to facilitate the family constellation work that I was talking about earlier. Yeah. So that the whole piece together is 12 months.
12 months. The spiritual foundation. Do you want to go into that, or even just say your background? Because when I met you, you'd been working in the spiritual field for maybe 15 years. I don't know, a long time anyway. And you were running all sorts of courses on everything. And you you basically ran at least one course on everything. And you might not ever repeat a course. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you do all this work, like your preparation for the PowerPoints, the presentations, and the work, and how you're going to do it, and the handouts, the worksheets, and then you're never using it again. But so you'd been working in that field, and you had a huge background. You worked on the cancer helpline. You worked
Cancer
with
Lifeline.
families, Lifeline, and you worked with the families of the bereaved, and your own dreams told you to drop certain things that you were doing because you were doing too much. You're spreading yourself too thin. So I would imagine you're way overqualified again for anything you're doing. Would that be true?
Well, I'll say this. So I took the 30 years of training that I've invested in and learned, and I've pulled out the essential pieces that will address the most common energetic, spiritual, ancestral root causes of suffering. And so that's what I'm teaching people, is those essential pieces out of working with energy, working with dreams, intuition, shamanic work. Yeah.
So I like that. Even you say shamanic work. So you've spent years doing shamanic work. You know,
About
you gloss
30.
over your resume. You definitely do. So, all right. And I said, we're going to do your dream because it'll allow me to ask you what you do, because you definitely have done a lot. And I like that you're teaching a course like this, because I know when it comes to all the courses I've done in my lifetime, if I could ever find a course that was, hey, this is the best bits of so many things, it would have been a blessing, because I've done lots of courses. I'm sure you've done them as well. And they give little things, but not anything really strong or comprehensive. And you have to put a lot of things together to build up your tool chest, let's say. And those courses didn't used to exist, but I'm glad they do now. So the first part is that. The second part then is where you're focusing on constellation work. And are you bringing the client through exercises, or the student through their own constellation work during the course, so they're growing and healing at the same time?
Yes, absolutely. So some of the people that take the program are really just in it for their own personal development, their own personal healing. And some people are going to take that and go on to use it with clients. But people have had really profound transformations through the course in terms of changing physical symptoms, emotional patterns, feeling more at home in their body, having a greater sense of belonging and connection to spirit and to their family and to the world in general. People have had radical changes in their relationships, finding love, or, stepping out of relationships that fit an old pattern and weren't serving them anymore.
Yes.
So it's a big year for people. Yeah.
All right.
So there's that experiential piece as well as teaching piece.
And you've run it before. How long, when did you come up with this course?
So this will be the fourth time that I've offered it. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. So people can get the details of that where?
Yes, on my website, true-radiance.com/podcast.
So what else do you do with people? Do you work with people one-to-one yourself?
I do. My calendar is pretty full these days, but I do work with people one-on-one. And then in addition to the longer training, I also have some like afternoon workshops. I've got one coming up on belonging. Did one on your intuitive body, which is on developing intuition through sensation in the body, which is a great course. I'm really loving it because, like dreams, You don't have to be an amazing psychic to be able to get guidance from your soul or from your higher self when you learn how to get it through your body. So, yeah.
All right. Sounds fascinating. So you have little courses as well as your big courses, and they're coming up again. When is the 1 year course starting?
The 1 year course starts March 13th.
All right. And people can get details of that at true-radiance.com/podcast. And the link to that will be under this episode on YouTube and Libsyn and wherever else you find it. Susan, is there anything you want to say in closing? I'll give you the last word, but it's absolutely a pleasure having you back on the show. And I hope you come back again.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Michael. I think the last thing that I'll say, because I know your listeners are very interested in dreams, is just tying it back to how the influence of a parent, the influence of things that happen in our childhood, those are things that come up super often in dreams. And dreams will tell us that we need to work on them, or that they're impacting us or limiting us in some way. The impact is limiting us. But our dreams don't tell us how to work with it. So I know you offer cutting the ties. Family constellations is another way of really changing the impact, freeing ourselves of that repeating cycle through generations so that we can really step into our gifts and live our full potential. So right. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show. And I've been a recipient of your work. I can testify it is amazing and very eye-opening. You would absolutely love working with Susan. Okay, everybody, thanks a lot. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.